Okay.
Okay, I want to say welcome to the June 2024 RBTC Board of Directors meeting. This is our last meeting of the fiscal year, so it's really, really exciting, I guess. But usually this month we don't typically have a regular program visit. We look at support programming. So we're going to kind of split it up a little bit. Terry Herzog, who is our school counselor in the rule book for CTE, it calls it school counseling coordinator because we work with all of our sending schools, was just really unable to be here. So she came up with a great glimpse into her work through the year that's shared with people here. Is there anybody online that, no?
Oh yeah.
So all the cool kids are here. So I did meet with Terry to debrief this. I'm going to ask Derek to chime in because there's some connecting points where Derek works pretty closely with the counseling function. And then I want to leave enough time for Dave to talk about cooperative education because there are some unique challenges that surface when we dig into it. So Terry keeps track of their student visits. Last year she had 486. You can see how that breaks down, but I think the interesting pie section is the green one, which I would probably say that it's heavier in that it's more of the social, emotional kind of pieces, and all of us here are connected with the school for the most part in some way, and know that that's a really big aspect of what's happening with our students, and it's not a surprise to see it here, and that sometimes maybe we see more here because they're more comfortable here given the tightness of the relationship, or maybe not, but the interesting thing is that close to half of it is just based on talking somebody through a situation or supporting a student who is in need.
What's your guess of what that percentage would have been last year or 2 years ago?
Well, last year or 2 years ago, it probably been pretty close to the same because we're still bouncing out of the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
How about pre-pandemic?
I would say pre-pandemic, and I think about back when Roger McNamara would do it, is he was very intentional about scheduling appointments with every junior and every senior at certain times of the year. Now the flow is automatically is just coming in. Derek, what do you think?
I think at the beginning of my career, which is more like 10 years ago, it probably was something like 25 to 30%. So, you know, it's close to double, is my read. Do you think that's probably right,
Yeah,
Chris?
that sounds likely.
I mean, it's not just schools, right? I think employers would say the same thing.
Yeah.
My one observation as I look at that is, I don't know what the repeat numbers are, but I know there are several students that their first thing in the morning was going to her office. And I believe they couldn't make it through the day without whatever went on in that office. It was imperative, and when she wasn't there, you saw it in the kids' eyes.
That didn't mean you get you off track.
No, that's fine. It's more of a discussion than anything. And I will say that also I noticed that when Derek's doing a discipline piece, and it's important to have that support involved. Work very closely hand in hand. That you screwed up, but we're going to support you get through it for the longer haul. What's important. She holds the writing workshops. She does post-secondary planning with students, and she did a mental health awareness with the kids in the construction trades. This year we made 4 mandated calls to DCF, 5 last year, but even the years before that was even more. We only had 1 Title IX report, but we had 4 investigations. Title IX are a pretty heavy lift for any school, and it's particularly, and that's a really low number. I know the former principal is sitting here, and I know that that's a lot. But here, we have very few personnel that are acting a supporting role, and there are defined roles as far as how you go about these investigations, and it's that particular piece of legislation had a different kind of institution in mind than a very small technical center school district. It had institution in mind with multiple staff members. They're going to talk about the different roles that are a must.
So it starts out with a coordinator, who is the person who's designated to receive the report and kind of orchestrates the whole show. But every position has to be held by a different person. So then there's an investigator who has to be impartial. We tap KBC, Kelly Broker Campbell, because she knows people, but she's not in the classrooms all the time. There's not an obvious bias that's going to come out. After that, it goes back to the coordinator, who then brings it to the initial decision maker, who is me. But then you also have to have an appellate decision maker, which is Scott. And it just gets tricky doing that in an institution this small, and the timelines, while they aren't as rigid as the state of Vermont's, like you've got 5 days to figure this out. It almost makes it harder because they're a little bit longer and they're split up over a bunch of different people. So making sure you do everything right, making sure you're on the timeline, making sure that you've got the right staff in the right places. And then while you would think it'd be cut and dry, a lot of it really is kind of gray. So you end up having to reach out to a lawyer to make sure that the decisions that you're making are the right decisions, because do you file, do you not file? If the person who the complaint comes from doesn't file, like you need to be not intentionally indifferent, but you also can't overstep when they don't want you to. So it's a lot more difficult to do well than it sounds, and it's one of those things that everybody really wants to get right. So it's a pretty stressful process, and a lot of districts are bigger than us, and they contract that out or have a person who's that's their sole job. So having a guidance counselor who's super competent and does a great job at that is great, but it can feel like a very different tone to the role than what the counselor is used to.
And Derek will kind of keep me in the loop of what's happening, but like he gets excited, goes, oh, I can treat this as a hazing, harassment, and bullying thing rather than have to go through Title IX, because sometimes as an administrator, you can see a straight line on how to solve it between the students and move ahead. But the timeline is restrictive that you have to follow, so you can't really take the action you really want to take because you got to have the timeline play out. And meanwhile, this bad thing is somewhat still there and not totally wrapped up.
And if things go well, the timeline is 80 days, which is half a school year. So in terms of, having discipline be impactful and meaningful and, having outcomes for victims that are clear and easy to see, it's really not great.
Again, we are fortunate that we have this few, because in talking with the schools we work with, this is a large part of what some people are doing, and we're fortunate to have this few, but it still is the role confusion of having to break it out the way that it is because we're a small entity. Terry did it very, very well, and we try to be thoughtful about it, but yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, an organization our size. In the fall, lots of new student stuff, lots of last minute tours of people who are considering coming here. Because sometimes kids don't worry about what they're doing next year until it's the next school year. And a lot of last minute tours, schedule changes, shuffling the deck, working with planning schools, and checking in with the seniors to make, hey, it's your senior year. What's the plan? How can we help you execute that plan in providing that gentle nudge right from the beginning? And the other thing is our guidance and special populations coordinator, and we actually contract with Cynthia Michelle to help us with doing work keys, which is a really big thing. They had a wonderful plan to how we implement and do it. It's very successful, but it is a lot of work. Can I get a nod from Chris on work keys?
Amen.
Yes, thank you. Playing to the crowd. Winter, that is called recruitment season. It is all around the state of Vermont. Different people do it different ways, but this position works with Kelly Brooker Campbell as our outreach person, and we try to take a very thoughtful tack with it. So they go do presentations to all the sending schools. They coordinate with the students that are ambassadors, because we think it's better for the kids to tell our story than for old people to tell the story like me. But then we also do all those the kids are trained to go to different sending schools. They tell the story, and we also do what's called a career interest inventory of sorts to kind of have the kid do a visit to a program that makes sense. And that we want it to make sense for the kid that would never consider coming here. And I remember one of the first years that we put this in place, and I think Bellows Falls was the first that came through, you could tell the kids were like, why am I even here? And I said, because we want you to check things out. And when they came back, they were focused, they were listening. I don't know if more signed up than weren't going to sign up, but at least you could tell something had changed in their mood when they, upon arrival. And if we help the kid decide that something they didn't want to do or turn them on to something, then that's how we view it. We have the counselors come over for breakfast to talk about and coordinate when we're doing the outreach stuff. This is a really cool things we've started to do because we had not as many kids try to earn the program, the different scholarships that we offer here. And in the past few years, we've had a lot of people come from the public come forward that have provided us more resources to support our students. But we have 7 or 8 kids that would apply for it. So we weren't really spreading the money around. So Terry, working with Coralie, who's her support down there, our registrar, did periodic sessions in the afternoon to coach the kids up. This is what you should put on the application. This is what the essay should sound like and look like so that the kids can represent themselves and put their hat in the ring. So I think this year we were pretty close to 18, 20 kids maybe that got their packets all together. So it gave us more opportunity to have more kids recognized. They work with this programs that take sophomores to schedule sophomore interviews with the sending schools, because we don't have to take sophomores, but we'll take a sophomore that's ready. So Carrie coordinate all that. She worked with Tina to put together what students will be inducted to the NTHS. It's a time-consuming piece. It's multiple hours interviewing kids in this room, and it's very thoughtful about how they go about it. Tina, did you want to add anything about that? And I got it, thanks. I'm paying attention around here. And then we do work keys again in the spring, and that's in the fall. It's only for juniors or first-year students. In the spring, it's everybody gets one last shot again, so it's a little bit bigger. And then we're doing something new at the instructor's urging is students that are going to enroll in our pre-tech exploratory program coming for a visit, actually seeing the place. Because what was happening is kids were signing up as 8th graders, sometimes 9th graders, and not even coming in the building. And we wanted to make sure that early on they had an idea where they were going to arrive and some level of what the expectation was as far as work. We do weekly EST, which is really, hey, this kid's in trouble. Things aren't going the way we want. And there's a team that has Derek, our special populations coordinator, Terry Herzog, who's our guide, and who else is on that?
Just whichever teacher is dropping in to bring concerns.
Yeah, and it's really how do we support students, and it's a requirement in education, and we do it that way here. She does monthly meetings with each counselors from each sending school to connect with how the kid is doing here with them. That is a unique thing that we do. The opposed to other places that serve our students, that serve their students. We have a lot of families come through, do tours. We've had an increase in our homeschool students. Some of it has to do with word of mouth, and we do tours with all of them. And yeah, on the back, Carrie coordinates a visit to Keene State. We put as many kids as we can in that sign up in our little bus and big bus if necessary. Like I said, she's a NTHS person, and then also she's a treasurer for the Tech Center Counselors Association in the state of Vermont, and coordinated all of the $1,000 scholarships from the Philip Hoff thing. I remember the urgency when she handed me a fistful of checks because I was going to the directors meeting. She reminded me lots, and when I got there, the directors that I needed to hand them off to weren't there. So we had to get them in the mail really, really quickly, and it all worked out. But Terry is leaving us. Any school is only as good as the people that you have, and we were fortunate to have her for the time that we had her, and she will sorely be missed.
Top notch.
Top notch.
I agree with that.
Dave Culver, co-op.
What I did was kind of put together a list of things that I thought of, and Scott, I imagine, has got something, and he can guide me as I go through this. And if you've got questions, that's kind of, I guess, why I'm here. I'm going to start with a brief introduction. I know some of you others I haven't met. My name is Dave Culver. I run the co-op program here. Briefly, I've been in public education since birth because my mother is a public educator. But in 1982, I became a wood shop teacher. Later, that transitioned to something called technology education. Different than what we do here. This is technical education. I can explain the difference, but I did that in New York for 3 years and out to Colorado for another 15. Wanted to move back to my family home, which is in Grafton, and took a job here teaching the machine shop program. Without going into it, I walked into that machine shop and I did not know a single name of a single machine. I didn't know what a lathe or mill or anything was, but they were desperate and I knew how to teach wood shop. So that was close enough, and I was lucky to have some Lovejoy folks come and teach me what I needed to know. I transferred there to more of what I'm very interested in, was drafting in CAD and computers. Taught that for a couple of years, and that evolved into what I called an integrated manufacturing curriculum, where our numbers, especially manufacturing, dropped so low that there was a discussion to close the program. So we integrated manufacturing while Chris Gray happened to be co-op coordinator for a couple of years. Then in 2008, Chris Gray and I had dinner one night and said, hey, what would it be like if we switched jobs? And we've been like this ever since. So I've been the co-op coordinator since 2008. Co-op, for those that don't know what it is, it's basically work-based learning or internships. I describe myself as I'm liaison for our teachers for virtually anything outside that class door. I did 25 years in a classroom. I know how much work it is. I take great pride in saying, you do your job and let me worry about employers and that kind of thing. And it's a very organic model. What do you need kind of question. Different teachers have different needs. It is co-op coordinator is not general education. I am CTE here in Springfield. It's been here since 1918, continuously. Until the mid-1980s, it was 100% machine tool trade. I have some documentation from the 1940s that had 60 kids in co-op, all in machine tool trades and all in 3 shops. Guess which ones? You know, there was a full-time co-op office down in the Fellows building. In fact, just for the co-op coordinator back in the day. Now I am a service, as Scott said, to our programs. Teachers, what can I do for you? And students, what can I do for you? And the answer is very greatly from program to program. In general, I describe it as 5 things. Guest speakers. Teachers come and say, hey, I need a guest speaker. All right, what are you looking for? I need somebody that can talk about, choose a subject, and I go out and find them. I line it up. I see if I can come in and do something. Field trips, a lot of that's just paperwork. I'm a bureaucrat. I do the paperwork. Where do you want to go? I want to go to Can-Am. I want to see how they make bridges. All right, I get hold of Can-Am. We set up a date. I do the paperwork. I line up the bus. We get things going, make sure things go okay. I say, nice, thank you, note. one of my big jobs is creating long-term relationships. Those thank you notes are the most important part of my job, in my opinion, to keep that positive relationship. We do job shadows. Scott, before the meeting, said, Dave, talk about some of the stuff we've got going on. Job shadows is one of the areas. We can talk education. I am a teacher by heart and in my bones, but this stuff is legal stuff. Job shadows. Keep your hands in your pockets. Don't touch a thing. The insurance doesn't cover it. It's not a hands-on work experience. I say that because what Scott said earlier, one of the things that we're working on is what I'm going to change the name quickly, an enhanced job shadow. Chris Gray Kids sends kids out, and it'd be great if they could help a little, but to do that, and if he's got 10 kids in the program and there's 15 employers, that's 150 contracts. I need every kid to get signed for every employer and every employer to sign for every kid. And it's bureaucratic paperwork. I'm working with the DOL, I'm working with the AOE. Scott is guiding me. I'm talking to teachers. How can we pare this down maybe? In the job shadows that you sign one form and says all kids in the tech center can come and do hands-on learning for the entire school year.
And this is one of the actions we're taking because in our CLNA it showed maybe we needed to improve our work-based learning percentage.
Job shadows don't count.
But when we looked at it, it came down to, we found out it was really simply paperwork with how the AOE wants to see it, and how do we capture the wonderful experiences that these kids are having. If it simply comes down to paperwork, how can we streamline it so that we get credit for the real work that we're doing? So that's what Dave's working on.
And then the last two things, which is really supposed to be the bread and butter what I do, and it varies year to year, are the full-blown internships, paid and unpaid. The technical terms in Vermont are career work experiences for unpaid and cooperative technical education experiences for the paid ones, but it's paid and unpaid. The paid ones, all of them, I got to worry about Fair Labor Standards Act. The unpaid, there's a whole set of laws that I've become very comfortable in knowing over the last 15 years dealing with the unpaid laws. So those are the kinds of things, let's call them the tools that I can offer. How we use them depends on the kid, the program, the time of year, etc. For every placement, and I'm lucky enough, I'm very proud, I boast about my Rolodex. Yes, an old-fashioned Rolodex. When you give me a business card, you're an employer, I put it in my Rolodex. It holds 1,500 cards. It's full.
Remember 1982.
They're also repeated in my Google contact list, all right? But it's my visual reinforcement of what I do. The second one is almost full. I got over 4,000 names that I collected that started with a blank Google contact when I started this job. But those contacts, it's the employers you folks know in your area. They're incredibly supportive. And so what I look for in new employers primarily, kid comes and says, I want to work for this company. I'm a guy at 3, I can't come to 4. Number one, it's got to be safe. And I am black and white on this. I will go to the employer. I will review the work site. When I look for safety, there are 2 things I look for. Number one, I'm an old shop teacher. I know shop safety. I know all the rules from safety glasses to guards to spacing to all of that. I'm lucky as a co-op coordinator. They have to have that as a background. Is it physically safe? But just as important, is it emotionally safe? Because our kids are still kids. And not every employer would I consider emotionally safe for these kids. I have some employers, since he's been on, I might never call this, even if they call me. My previous director gave me do not send kids to, and I got 2 employers that are, I'm not going to mention because you know them personally. So that's one thing that
I remember one thing we're going to praise a young lady on a job site, and Dave walks in, and what does he see? Those calendars that have young women that a lot of shops have. Dave's like, I don't think we ought to go there.
It's fine for a private business, not illegal, but these are high school kids that I want to have a positive environment for their first work experience. So the first one is the safety piece. The second was legality. I go through legality piece. Part of it's OSHA, that goes back to safety, and we got to deal with that. But I deal with 2 Fair Labor Standards Acts virtually every day of my career. One is the child labor law, because most of the kids I deal with are 17 years old. I am allowed to deal with 16-year-olds. I'm not allowed with my license to deal with 15-year-olds when it comes to a lot of what I do. I can send them on a job shadow. Anybody legally can do that. It's some of the internships that I'm not allowed to do. But under FLSA, you've got the child labor laws that I've got to worry about, and you've got the unpaid internship laws to worry about. And all these laws are buried in my contracts, and we do paperwork to make sure we cover all of this. The other thing under legality I put is, if somebody gets hurt, who's the primary insurer? That is a question I ask every single time to everybody, and it's amazing how often it's gray. It's like, it should be black and white every time, and it's not. And, you know, as we all know, it's usually whoever's got the most money buys the most lawyer, but I'd like to know in black and white. And we have issues every year, and we do the background check, and we get hold of Bisbit, who is phenomenal, and if we need to. We've talked already, I've talked to Tina that we're gonna have a meeting about some issues I've got in the next week or two. I'm not an insurance person. I gotta trust what they're saying. And then finally, it's gotta be educational. If it's not educational, hey, you know what, the first two are fine, but we are a learning institution. And hey, you know, my friend's mowing lawns and I wanna mow lawns and I wanna go, well, what are you gonna learn? What do you get better at? You know, hey, you know, I got a friend, I got a job washing dishes, and if you do a contract, I get out of school early and I get to wash dishes. All right, then what? It's got to be a progressive learning. And I know we have at least one educator, and some of you guys have been involved in education forever. You got to start where the kid starts. Dishwashing for some kids is very inappropriate. You could be running the kitchen. I'm not going to allow a co-op in dishwashing. Other kids, that is a lifetime goal, and we work with kids that if we can get you independent in doing this, that's a bigger home run than some valedictorian that happens to be running a kitchen somewhere, in my opinion. So the educational piece is a subjective piece. I would have to work legally, not legally. I do work with the program teachers, but legally we have to document that learning. Briefly, without going into it, as a teacher, you develop a curriculum, a path. This is what we're going to learn step by step. In internships, all you can do is guided learning. And what I mean is I cannot tell an employer, I want this kid to use a circular saw 20 minutes during his internship every day. We're not using circular saws this week, sorry. Instead, we give them a long task list of what are the skills in that profession. And kids do a weekly timesheet for me where they have to document, I spent 2 hours framing, I spent 20 minutes in concrete work, I spent 5 minutes in layout, I did tool maintenance for this amount, it adds up to my time. And then every kid, every week gets the same 3 questions from me. Question number 1, what did you do this week? And I expect them to use professional language, meaning if you're in the construction industry, talk like professional carpenters talk to each other. Don't talk to me like I'm a 5th grader. If you're in the healthcare industry, it doesn't matter if I don't understand the terminology, which I barely do sometimes, you know, but talk like you're talking, because you've got to, if you're going to France, you got to learn French. If you're going into the healthcare, learn the language, talk the language, write the language. Second question, what did you learn or get better at? And I tell the kids and employers, the day that kid writes nothing, I drop them from co-op. Co-op is a learning experience. You're not learning, you're done. Kids get frustrated because like, well, I didn't learn anything new. Good, you're ready for the next level. 2-part question, what did you learn or get better at? And sometimes it's just things like, I got better at calming a patient down. Well, kids don't realize how huge that is in that profession. It's like, that's an incredible skill set. You can't measure it on a test, you know, let's put that in work keys. You ain't gonna see it there, you know, but that kind of stuff goes on. So, and then the last question is reflective. And that's where the real learning takes place. How did it go? What was good? What was bad? Kids do those kinds of things. One of my notes, I won't talk about it a lot. A big thing that's changed the last 10 years is Act 77. Each of our high schools have work-based learning coordinators. There's a couple of negatives because there's some really touchy laws that says those folks aren't supposed to be dealing with certain employers, and they do. And 99% of the time, I'm really, really good with it. And the reason is because I am so lucky, because I work with other co-op coordinators in the state. You folks have some wonderful work-based learning coordinators in your buildings. I separate kudos to Heather down there. Warriors is amazing, and folks like that help us more than I help them. I'll be blunt about it. They are there. Sometimes we don't provide transportation. Those folks can. I coordinate them, so we talk about kids. So Act 77, every high school has a work-based learning coordinator. The big thing that I think is now clear In our programs, there are exemptions from child labor laws. The other work-based coordinators, because they're not CTE, do not have those exemptions. This region's been pretty clear about it, and the work-based learning coordinators understand it and have avoided that line. Other places in the states, it's nobody's gotten hurt, so nobody's gotten in trouble, but it's been an issue. So
A lot of that has to do with, we've had a pretty good, because Dave's been here a long time, great relationship with all the work-based learning. They try to support each other rather than stepping in front of each other.
I feel real lucky about that when I talk to some of the other coordinators around the state. Very briefly, my standard operating procedure. It's very individualized. Different teachers have different needs. I have a website. They go to the website, kids fill out an online form. Gives them basic information. What's your name? What's your age? What do you want to be when you grow up? Do you have transportation? There's a whole list of questions that we go through to get some idea. And there's also a self-assessment for employability. You know, grade yourself 1 to 5. Are you dependable? Are you hardworking? Do you dress appropriately? How's your communication skills? So I have some sense of their self before I meet with them. Then when I meet with them, and I don't want to get too wonky into the education stuff, I don't know what you know about it, but nationally we use, there's 3 stages of career development. Normally elementary school is career awareness. Hey, where does mommy and daddy go in the morning when they leave? Middle school is kind of supposed to be career exploration. You know, all these sectors and all these opportunities. Let's do personality surveys and let's see what might be interest you. High school is supposed to be this career preparation, and then you're ready for the real world. I know that's a theory anyways. What I find is kids with a month left before they graduate are still in career awareness stage. Big time. I work with them very differently than the kids are well underway. It's like, I'm all lined up, I want an internship, etc., kinds of stuff. After that, I say, what are you looking for? And I'll tell you the honest reasons kids tell me why they sign up for co-op. Number 1 reason, I want to get out of school and go to work. All right, we'll see what we can do. That's what we're all about. Let's get you out there. But I do have all these laws I got to follow. Others are occasionally learn a specific skill like TIG welding. That's so specific that I got some kids that say I can't learn that anywhere except for any work-based learning experience. Explore an industry sector, make network connections. I want to be a plumber. I want to go meet the plumbers in the region. Transition directly into workforce is a big one for the seniors. Is I am looking for a work-based learning experience that might hire me when I graduate. That's a huge piece. And then the child labor laws exemption, where kids, if they're working for me, can use power, or through my program, can use power tools and some other stuff like that. Job shadows are very minimal, no paperwork. It varies by program. Manufacturing, I think I estimated about 78 job shadows that he sent out this year for. He's out every month, 2 days a month, and he has a phenomenal program. And my whole role is just support. Hey, Dave, I got a kid that wants to be an architect this year. Get some architects. Yeah, let me go do some research. Let's visit. Yeah, we got some. Very non-involved. Pre-tech, that's 9th and 10th graders. I have kids that want to be everything from a tattoo artist to a pilot, and every kid gets a job shadow, and they have no transportation. That's a time sucker, but it's really a lot of fun because they have some weird ideas out there. And then the internships, again, they're paid and unpaid, and I've kind of gone through that already. That we set them up, the kids do timesheets, we have attendance issues that Scott is well aware of, Derek is even more aware of. Kids got to call in every day if they're not here. It's, hey, we got to do the attendance piece. And then my last category is just briefly, I got issues. These are the issues that I see us dealing with right now. Scott mentioned we got some things going on involving state interpretation of DOL statutes. The AOE is really our boss, but the laws I worry about is DOL. DOL has made it clear to me, hey, whatever AOE says is what we agree with. Okay, so AOE makes those decisions, and they've interpreted some of the things different than we have in the past.
And we're simply just trying to get kids that are completing the carpentry program on great work sites. But the problem is that they took the program as sophomores and juniors, and what does that all mean? And we've gone to the end of it.
Well, it's not so much the level 2 to level 3. That's the one I was talking about, slightly different. Yeah. Summer co-ops.
They want to work in the
exemptions summer. Say you got to be in a program. Are kids in program during the summer? Which one's the lawyer? Give me an answer. So we went right to the top and asked their opinion. They responded with some filtering questions. How are you going to monitor it? How do you document the learning, etc.? I responded. We went back and forth. Today we got a, hey, sounds good. Go for it. We'd love to hear how it's going. So we've got 4 kids that are going to be on summer co-ops. We've done them for years. Actually, have not done them since COVID. But before that, we always did them, and it looks like they're back up. And we've got some really strong blessings from the AU and that's a good one. The biggest issue I got is transportation. Kids don't drive. This is a rural area. Hey, I live in Mount Holly, and I hear there's an opportunity in Leominster. Wonderful. What am I going to do for you? You know, and I got no budget for it. And that's where Heather comes in. John Donoram comes in sometimes and helps out at Green Mountain. It varies.
So is kids driving themselves the general?
Or get a ride, yeah.
Okay, so when you say transportation,
If
it's
kid
a
doesn't
problem
have it-
if the kid can't drive himself, but in general, kids are driving themselves to these things. They're not driving themselves.
I hate to believe everything on COVID, but things are different. Kids don't even have their licenses anymore. Like, you're
Sure.
not thinking about it. You're 18 years old, kid. Come on.
But ideally, it's a kid driving themselves.
Kid, parent, aunt, uncle.
Okay, they provide their own transportation.
Yes, is
Yeah.
the rule.
And there's a few on the bus route, but those are
Few
hit
and
or
far
miss.
between.
Yeah, BF kid going to Sonics is a wonderful thing for me. I can do that quick and easy. You know, permission slip from mom, give it to transportation department, we're good to go. It's some other ones. He wants to go to Burlington. So, I mentioned student motivation. I don't know what's up with that. I will say this one, I mentioned it before, but to me, it's a big deal. There is no K-12 career development articulated curriculum that I'm aware of in any building. And so we get them, they vary from some that have a solid understanding to some that have given no thought, other than, let's face it, kids coming out of 9th grade have made one decision, either they're going to college or not. That's the one thing they know. Beyond that, they don't even know what they're going to college for or not going for. Apprenticeships, we're working on developing a stronger pipeline with the state apprenticeship program, which is a good thing. And always dealing with New Hampshire because New Hampshire has a whole different set of state labor laws than Vermont, good and bad. So I'll stop there because I'm way over my time. Sorry about that.
We could have predicted.
You went longer than I did, boss. Just keeping track of time. Hey, look at this guy nodding his head.
Well, all I know is, you know, this place, Dave, is lucky to have you and has been lucky to have Terry as well, and just in both cases genuinely care about the students. And I know from my day job, you have a great relationship with the employers in the region and try to figure it out. And that sounds simpler than it really is sometimes.
So, and that's why Scott talked, is we spend a lot of time, we know what the kids want, and we know what's best.
Right.
Let's develop a piece of paper, you know.
Any questions for Dave? Anybody online, questions for Dave on anything he presented?
No.
Okay.
I'm impressed you made it through band carpentry, started with all your digits.
Well, my experience growing up, all my carpentry instructors had something missing.
I'm a shop teacher, how you doing?
I thought that was.
My dad was a machinist, he has the end of his finger left.
Yeah.
Drill a hole through my hand. That's what
You went through the gauntlet, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks,
Good job, Dave.
I get paid to come here. You guys don't. I don't get this.
$4 a year. All right, it is 5:12. Hope Tina will be back in the room. But I'll keep talking. So the first item of business is board reorganization. So a reminder probably for Chris and Kelly. This is a unique board because it is made up of elected school board members and others. So this is the one time a year, and others, your school board. So your weights are voted, and we never have contentious votes, thankfully, but if they were, the weights would come into play. This is the one time a year where, because there's nobody here from Springfield, you three are the only people that are going to vote on this first part. So the elected school board members elect the others, and Jim and Liza. So we have two seats that are up for renewal. I believe, thankfully, both are willing to continue, but we do have to do a process here. So the first one is the Bellows Falls at-large board member. And I would look for a motion, first of all, again, you three are the only three that can vote on these next few motions.
Does that mean we're the only ones that can nominate or
Correct.
make motions?
Correct.
Then we can vote on Andrew.
No.
Okay.
No, this is only the
That was
sending
the
school
question.
members. Only the sending school members.
Got it. Thank you.
So but I'll give suggestions. So I would need a motion from one of the three of you to open nominations for the Bellows Falls at-large board member for the 3-year term ending 2027. Getting the hang of it, good. And discussion on that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. So Andrew has been serving as the Bellows Falls at-large board member. Thankfully, we appreciate your willingness to continue. If there are other nominations, I'd love to hear them, but otherwise we look for a motion to close nominations and accept the nomination of Andrew as the Bellows Falls at-large board member for the 3-year term ending June 2027, and have the superintendent director cast one vote in favor of Andrew.
So moved.
I'll give it to Chris and second by Lois.
Okay.
Discussion on that motion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Good, that's one down, one to go. So next, ask for a motion to open nominations for the Ludlow at-large board member for the 3-year term ending June 2027.
So moved. Okay.
All right, Kelly. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. So our friend Jim Rumrell, who is on screen, has agreed to continue as the Ludlow at-large board member. Slow down. And unless there are other nominations, I would look for a motion to close nominations and accept the nomination of Jim Rumrell as the Ludlow at-large board member for the 3-year term ending June 2027, and have the superintendent director cast one vote in favor of Jim Rumrell.
Second.
Great. Discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Jim and Andrew, thank you for your willingness to continue service.
Thank you.
So next we have the officers. Everybody can play in this game. The current slate is myself as chair. Paul was the vice chair, but is no longer on the board, and Andrew, secretary clerk. I am willing to continue. I believe Andrew is willing to continue. And Jess Burlew, the Springfield representative, not just because she's not here, but is willing to serve.
That's a good enough reason.
Is willing to serve
Sounds
as vice chair. And actually, I kind of skipped ahead. Can I get a motion to open nominations for the officers of the Tech Center School District Board? Now giving Andrew the second on that. So motion by Lois, seconded by Andrew. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Raise hands. Thank you.
Aye.
I skipped ahead. So the proposed slate is myself as chair, Jess as vice chair, and Andrew as secretary clerk. Can I get a motion to close nominations and elect that slate for the board for the next fiscal year, and have the superintendent director cast a vote in favor of that slate?
So moved.
Chris, seconded by Lois.
Whoever. Whatever.
Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody, and an honor to continue serving. Just additions, changes to the agenda, just a note that we're going to do 2 executive sessions. We will do one in the BTVLC part of the meeting, and then we'll have another at the end.
And we're really trying to accommodate Greg. He's trying to make a school event for his son. So we're going to jump right into it.
Okay, well, before that, any public comments? Okay, and let's do the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda, please? Andrew, seconded by Lois. Scott, anything on the consent agenda?
No, we're thinking of kind of closing where we were last year. We're 6 students ahead from where we were last year, with 15 fewer Fall Mountain students, which really in the long term plays out because Vermont kids in our 6th semester average. So in the long term, we're headed in the right direction. We're wrapping up the fiscal year. When Christine Balch, I said, if you really look at it, where are we going to end up? And she said about $120,000 to $130,000 in the surplus, and we're at 126, 134. So good job, Christine. We will use that to help with next year where we are in a deficit position. But ended up about like we thought.
Any questions or concerns about anything regarding the consent agenda?
Well, just a real quick question. What happens with for a career center as a school district, what happens with the reserve? I mean, excuse not the reserve, but the surplus.
We're gonna spend it on the building overhead that we have for Springfield, which we've already been billed for.
Okay.
Which is close to $400,000. So in our interpretation from our auditors, because we received the invoice for that, we can kind of move ahead in that way.
Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote to accept the consent agenda and approve the items contained within it. Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, on to VTVLC. Greg?
Good evening, everyone. Just open by saying I appreciate the accommodation of the agenda adjusting a little bit. My son has a band concert this evening, so I do need to duck out by 5:30 or shortly thereafter to be able to get there. So my update is relatively brief. So starting with the FY24 budget update from the documentation, again, very few changes from the last month in terms of what we are projecting in terms of a current surplus of 112,000 and change at this point. That's been consistent all year. We have trying to close out POs and make sure that we have all spending accounted for, and so that we really have a pretty good idea as to what we'll be carrying as far as a surplus for FY24, and it's been consistent all year in terms of what we're projecting. Questions, comments on FY24? Okay. So on FY25, we don't have a budget to present yet, but I do want to note that the proposed budget, we certainly have been working on it for quite some time. And as you know, the ESSER funds, which supported the creation of the K-8 program that we have, are sunsetting this year or in September. And so the K-8 program has grown, continues to grow, the enrollment. And we're getting calls every week for students that want to join and become part of our K-8 program. So we endeavor to keep it going next year. In order to do so, obviously without the ESSER fund supporting that, we are looking at the dipping into the fund balance that we have in order to help support that for the coming year. Obviously, we'll continue to work with the agency education around the value of this program is providing, the necessity of this program, and hopefully that they will be able to see that and provide some additional funding and support for it. But as it stands right now for FY25, VTVLC will be supporting that through its Flex Pathways grant, as well as dipping into the reserves. The current fund balance is, as you can see off that documentation there, $893,774. And so we project dipping into that to the tune of probably about $400,000 in order to support the K-8 program, which is obviously a very healthy dip into it. We are fortunate that COVID, one of the side effects of COVID was it allowed that fund balance to grow to the point it is right now. I think many people would argue that carrying a fund balance, a reserve of almost $1 million as a public institution is probably a little too high, right? And so you should be spending the money and resources on students and programs. And so the K-8 program, which we did downsize a little bit, and that was conversations we had a few months ago in terms of adjusting some of the staffing based on the enrollment numbers and that sort of thing. But in the proposed budget that will be coming forth in the August meeting, which would probably be the next meeting with the group, we would be looking at probably dipping into that fund balance to the tune of probably about $400,000.
So Greg, can I ask you that currently, if you go on the website, I think for next year, there's a price structure for that program for next year.
Yes.
Will that price structure be impacted by this dipping, or is that to allow that price to even be at that rate?
So that price structure, so it was free for the last couple of years, as you know, free to districts that supported their students to come to us. Obviously, with the ESSER funds going away, we can't offer that anymore. And so the cost structure that you see there off the website in terms of what it would cost to send a full-time student in K-8 to us doesn't cover the full true cost of enrollment. Quite short of it, actually. Obviously, there's concern about charging the full rate of what it would actually be to support it. We would probably see a lot fewer students enrolling in the program because districts would just not be able to support it. As it is right now, we have been communicating with districts that have have kids with us and say, well, next year it is going to be a cost, and here's how it's going to be, or here's what the costs are going to be. We have not seen, it's early yet, but we haven't seen an appreciable dip in enrollment because of that. Obviously, time will tell. Most of the enrollments come in during the summer timeframe. So that offsets it, yes. Does it cover it completely? No. And so we'll still have to dip into the reserves in order to fully fund that program. And really, it's the staffing of that program primarily.
Understood. Progress.
Yeah, what is the process for setting the price for a course?
So it was well, essentially looking at what is the cost to, for the licensing that we pay for the technology, for the platform we use, the licensing we pay for the curriculum that we utilize. We do purchase curriculum from FlexPoint, so it's an off-the-shelf curriculum that we buy, that we load into our learning management system. So those costs are factored into that. It's consistent with the costs of our 9-12 courses and programs. It's in line with that. Obviously, we didn't want to be too far out of bounds in terms of 9-12. We charge X amount of dollars and considerably.
Oh, that was kind of my overall question. It's kind of big picture. What's the mechanism in general? But I appreciate the specifics to the pre-high school program. But as for setting the cost, is it as simple as here's how much it costs us, here's how many enrollments we think we get, and then there's a division that happens? Or
well, if we did that in order to fully fund the program, the cost to schools would be many $1,000s more than what is listed right there. So we did do, based upon historical costs that we've charged districts in the past, we wanted to be in line with that for our 9-12, right? Because K-8 has been free. We wanted to be similar in line to that. And we also wanted to, this being the first year in which we would be actually charging a price, we wanted to be sensitive to the fact that we didn't want districts that had this as a free option for their students to virtual education to suddenly realize that it's going to cost them many, many thousands of dollars that they didn't have budgeted in order to support it. So it was a little, it was informed. I wouldn't necessarily say it was super scientific, but it was informed by the experience of VTBLC just historically over the years.
And there's a delta for participating schools and non-participating schools too, correct?
Yes. Correct. So details of the FY25 budget will certainly be coming in August. We still have not had the release of information in the grant management system from AOE regarding FY25. We're well prepared to be able to do that. Christine has done tremendous work on getting ourselves set for FY25 budgeting. All of our department heads have gotten their budgets in, and we've had many conversations on it. So we feel like we're in a very good place procedurally in order to get the budget presented.
And he's absolutely right in that the funding is something that legislature acts on. So really, it doesn't show up until about now, which will feed into some other conversations we're going to have.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, what else have you got?
So the third item is VTBLC restarted its advisory board this year, and on the advisory board, Scott sits on the advisory board. There's some community members, partner districts with us, administrators, but we are looking for a RVTC board member to sit on that. I know Ashley will probably be outreaching following this for any interested RVTC board member that wants to sit on the VTBLC advisory board. It meets quarterly, so there's just a few meetings throughout the course of the year, and to get updates on our VTBLC, the work that it's doing, curriculum programs, financials, and that sort of stuff. So
about an hour, and it's usually in the middle of the day is where it's going to spend.
Yep. So there will be follow-up on that regarding interested RVTC board members that would be interested in sitting on the advisory board. Position update. So just to provide an update that you approved some positions in previous meetings. And so those positions, 4 positions were posted internally. Those have been filled by the internal candidates that we had anticipated. So that process ran to completion. There are 2 instructional assistant positions that were posted internally that we didn't get applicants for. So those are going to be posted externally And we will start the process in the coming weeks of looking to fill those positions as well. So just kind of an update on that. Lastly, just upcoming events. You can see there it is end of the year. So end of the year celebrations this week in particular is the Lake Elmore celebration. We know we have many, particularly elementary and middle school students and families that just have built a community online. This is a great chance for them to get together and celebrate the end of the year. We have some in-person meetings to wrap up our year, June 27th and 28th. The summer sync up is the time where our partner teachers and adjunct teachers come together, and we provide 2 days of workshops for our teachers that we work with. And the OBLC conference, we are very far in planning that actually already. We've got dates confirmed, just confirmed this week for April of next year for that OBLC conference.
Questions on any of that for Greg? Okay.
Well, sorry, before you go on, Bob, one last thing I do want to say. I know it's not on the agenda. This is my last board meeting. As of June 30th, I will not be returning to VTVLC. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank the board, thank Scott, Tina, Christine, the VTVLC staff, which are excellent, for all their help and support of these last 2 years of me being here with VTVLC. It's definitely been an honor working with this group here, working with the VTVLC staff, which is phenomenal, and all that they do to serve the students, teachers, and districts all over the state of Vermont. So it has been my pleasure to serve. I just wanted to thank everyone.
Thank you, Greg. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for all you've done for VTVLC.
Thank you.
Could I get a motion to go into pursuant to Title I VSA Section 313 to enter executive session to discuss contracts because premature general public knowledge would place.
We're going to invite you, Greg.
I'm getting to
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Would place people at a substantial disadvantage, inviting Scott, Derek, and Greg.
Sure.
Lois, someone second that?
Second.
Please? Second by Andrew. Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pause the recording, please. Okay, so I'm going to resume the agenda. So let's see, we're under old business, report on technology reserve spend down.
Yeah, we've started last month. The board authorized us to spend, I can't remember, I think it was $30,000. We've spent $40,000. We spent $20,452. It really is related to annual software purchases. I have a listing here if you want to get into all of that. There'll be another big bump because there's another chunk of software that we have to buy. And again, this is part of our plan to take action on the deficit that we're projecting for FY25. And, we'll update you every month on that. If people are looking, I have the sheet right there, but we've spent about 20,000 of the 40,000.
Any questions or concerns about that? Great. All right, policies. Third time around for policy C15, student conduct and discipline, and D21, educational support team. Derek, anything different?
No changes.
Anybody have any concerns about either of these? All right, I would look for a motion to approve the third reading and the adoption of policies C15, student conduct and discipline. This was formerly C20, and D21, educational support team.
So moved.
I'll give Andrew the second. Discussion on the motion? All in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, on to new business and more reserve funds. This is the equipment reserve funds.
Yeah, the process of, went through with the teachers is looking at what were the things that could be categorized equipment in their local budget request for FY25, and then using reserve funds. So we've built up to access reserve funds to pay for those items. We've identified around $7,500 worth of equipment that we can buy that will again help us with approaching, really helping take care of the deficit that we're projecting for next year. So we would update you every month. Really, the action is giving us approval to go to $7,500 and then stop. And if we were gonna go over, we would ask for more permission to do that.
Any concerns about that before I ask for a motion? Would like a motion therefore to authorize accessing the RVTC equipment reserve funds not to exceed $7,500 with a monthly update to the board of directors. Andrew, second by Kelly. Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. NEASC.
Yeah, so we've been a New England Association of Schools and Colleges institution for all the years that I've been here. And we're up for our decennial visit. And as Derek and I examined, what does this NEASC provide us? Hard to come up with an answer to like, what is the value for the investment we would make in time and energy of staff, and roughly $4,000 a year for what NEASC turns out as a benefit for us. Also, in the light of the fact, and we've talked a little bit about investigating this, so made previous presentations, and Derek and I spent a couple sessions like, what does this look like? They modified what they do to make it more streamlined, but it still comes up that it's a lot of work, and I can't really say what is the benefit. Additionally, and we'll delve into it a little deeper as far as what all goes into what are the results of our comprehensive local needs assessment. That happens every 2 years, which is again a pretty deep self-reflection. Additionally, every 5 years, by state board rule, the AOE is supposed to come in and do a review of us. So about every 2 years, and then every 5 years, we're getting a look at really a quality control on our operation. I just think we don't need a NEASC review. It's duplicative, and I'm not sure what it does for us. So I'm asking for a motion that we would, I'm not sure how Tina put it, but forego our membership in New England Schools and Colleges as of June 30th of this year.
So I'm very curious, Chris, as a recovering administrator.
Sure,
Who's
yeah.
been through this?
Yeah.
What's your take?
Well, so here's my take on it. I think that, and your brief presentation covers some of my questions, but I think that every school needs a process by which someone from the outside who is very knowledgeable and well-informed in current best practices for that type of school comes in and gives them feedback on that. I'm not here to nitpick language, Scott, but you said every year the AOE is supposed to come in for a 5-year review. Do they actually do that? Does that happen?
I want to say it was more than 5 years ago when they did us.
Yeah.
That it was a lot of things, but it was also like the ADA and all of that. Are they like on the clock and they're always every 5 years? No.
So do you have, that sounds to me like they don't necessarily have a calendar, that says, okay, RVTC is next up in 2026, or do you have that?
No, and I think that then you throw the pandemic
Of
time
course,
in there,
of
which
course, yeah.
messes it up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when we had our NEASC review, the people that came were from day-long high school tech programs in Connecticut and Massachusetts, which maybe that feedback necessarily wasn't what we needed either.
Well, in fact, my experience has been because it's a New England thing and because technical education in different states work in different ways, sometimes the recommendations that come, again, either for a career center or for a comprehensive high school, don't, align with on a certain level with best practice, but don't necessarily align with what either the state level expectations are or the community's expectations are for an entity. So, and then sometimes those recommendations carry a certain amount of weight that maybe doesn't support what's going on. And so, so then there's some sussing out of the recommendations.
Translating,
for, yeah, exactly, you know, and yeah, they think we should do this way, but the reason we aren't is this, and so, again, this is the long version of, as long as we feel comfortable that we have a process for someone from the outside coming in and giving us some feedback, because a positive about whether it's NEASC or the comprehensive needs assessment is sometimes when I needed that a little bit extra oomph to move a staff in a certain direction or a board in a certain direction, you know, to be able to say, yeah, in our 5-year review from the AOE, they really strongly recommend this and I really support that, or NEASC, or whoever we get that from, getting that can provide that last bit of momentum on an initiative. So,
And the other point I would add is around the state of the different tech centers, there are maybe 5 centers that do NEASC.
Yeah.
There are less than 5 centers that do Southern Regional Educational Board.
Mhm.
So you do all of that, about half of the centers don't do anything at all.
Yeah.
And that I think that probably Lindenville and St. J do, I think they do NEASC, but they are a private school that has, so it's not the norm that a tech center has these. Has something.
I don't know why, I feel like that there's another organization that we bring in periodically that gives us some third-party feedback. Or is it NEASC the only one? Maybe I'm getting.
It's only NEASC.
It's only NEASC.
Well,
There
it's
isn't another, there
I
isn't
mean, basically, the
another.
Perkins Plan incorporates a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
And the Perkins
That's
Plan is the
the seal on
land,
anything.
that's the comprehensive local needs
That's-
assessment, so that's
Yeah.
what the feds require, which is, the report I sent back is 600 pages.
Yeah.
6 surveys, reflection from every staff member, every teacher about their practice. And do they have, that's the quality, do you have a dual enrollment? Do you have an IRC? What percentage of kids are getting? If the kids aren't getting it, what is your way to address it? So as Dave Culver talked about changing the paperwork, that's a response to how do we get more kids to count as work-based learning as an example of a corrective action we're taking that we reported to the state that we're doing.
There's also parents, students who are here, students who didn't come here, employers, like the pool of people who were reaching out for feedback is huge.
Yeah, I think the point, I don't, having been operating with the board for 15 years, I don't feel like we operate in a vacuum. I think like there's a lot of opportunity for people to make comment, and we often bring those comments into this room when we discuss what we're doing. So I agree, we can't operate in a vacuum. There has to be some established norms, I guess, that we follow. And to your point, if you want to move people in a certain direction, it's nice having a unaffiliated.
someone else came in and
body that-
said, we should do this, and it's
Yeah.
not just me saying
Yeah.
that.
Right. Liza?
I have a question. What's so if we opted not to participate for your whatever, is it like a huge big deal to change our mind later and be like, actually, we do want to do this?
To rejoin.
I think you can rejoin at any time. I think that they like the revenues. I think it'll be a little bit longer path. But I also know that Derek and I have gone to 2 trainings, and then those 2 trainings that have gone about how we go about this, the way that they're doing it has changed twice in the last 2 years. So I think any restart would be, you're starting with a whole new process anyways. So if we choose that we're gonna go away and we wanna come back, I'm sure that we would be welcomed with open arms and all of that. The other one that tech centers use is Southern Regional Educational Board, which, as I talk to my peers, is a different version of the same thing, but not very, people aren't like, oh, that's so much better, we should do that. And Derek actually was part of that at Riverbend. Does Riverbend still do it, or did they go away, do you know?
I am not sure. I stayed out of their politics since I moved out here.
And not every high school has an accrediting body.
Well, so that brings up something, and Scott and I talked about this morning. My first naive question as a layperson was, are we gonna get in trouble? Because I think of a school not part of our district across the river that lost its accreditation because of performance issues. And it was an issue. So what does that mean? And I'm trusting what our administrators are saying about this. I know certainly the process they've gone through on CLNA and how those things actually have been far more vigorous in the past few years.
Yeah.
I echo Chris's point about, good to have someone from outside taking a look at us for whatever reasons. It's a healthy thing. So I trust your judgments on what you're advising us.
I did ask, I brought it up in the last directors meeting, and half the room that don't do it say, why are you doing it anyway, Scott? The one thing that is a negative, and this is that what Ruth Durkee said is that some federal Department of Labor grants may have an accreditation requirement, but she said also that's more at the post-secondary level.
All right, so it's the administration's recommendation to forego this and not renew our accreditation with NECAS.
I would just also note, and again, this is far less about the money and more about the time and energy and what we get out of it. But in addition to the $4,000 annually, there's a price tag that goes along with going through accreditation. So,
In terms of staff time and our.
well, no, literally, they charge us money, or at least they used to.
For the
No,
visit.
for the trip.
Yeah, for the visit.
trip, right,
Yeah,
right.
that has a price tag with it.
I want to say the last time they were here, 10 years ago, it was $15,000 between meals and rooms and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, not
So-
10 years ago.
The last thing I was gonna say is if they're not relevant and a lot of other centers are not taking advantage, that also just reinforces them. Maybe you guys need to figure out how to be more relevant.
And that's what I said in this room, and I really like the guy that does that. Like, I'm like, we're really considering how valid this is for what we do. I was pretty honest with him, and that's when he said, well, we're changing it up, it's gonna be, I don't know how.
The
he
team
put it.
is smaller, the stay is shorter, like they're definitely under some pressure to make it more palatable because they're trying to make a lot of changes. And to me, that's just a sign of lots of people are leaving the ship. So they're trying to.
Well, so hearing all of that and having experienced NEASC a few times and experienced it in transition, I mean, that's almost a strong additional argument, which is they're kind of in a state of flux. Let's not let us be the guinea pig for the new process. Let's let them get that set and then revisit it a couple of years down the road. If it ends up having really positive feedback from schools that participate.
Would ask for a motion therefore to approve not renewing our accreditation with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges effective June 30th of this year.
I'll move.
Andrew and seconded by Kelly. Discussion on that motion? Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
If I run into Ruth, I'll say, talking to Scott Farr, he'd really like to get that 5-year annual review going sometime soon.
Bring it on.
I am just kidding.
No, I'm fine. I don't mind people looking at us and making suggestions. I just don't think NEASC is the relevant tool to do that. I think it would be great, and I've even suggested that the team is fellow CTE people that do it. You have a small team of 4 or 5. You you use the CLNA as your basis to build off. And then we're looking at each other because you gain best practices from each other, because there are some things that centers are doing way better than us and vice versa. And then you grow the product, which is very unique in Vermont because we deliver it in a very different way.
Sure.
Great. We'll deal with C, D, and E after executive session. Summer meeting schedule, unless there's a compelling desire on the part of the board, we typically punt on July and reconnect again in August. I assume that is okay with folks. If for some reason something happens, we'll let you know and we'll deal with it. But otherwise, I love you guys. We'll see you in August. Superintendent's report.
Yeah. In the superintendent's report, what it is a lot of celebration that happens at the year end and the accomplishments that our students have. Again, the weather held off for our recognition ceremony, which was awesome. To run through, you should have seen the big chocolate thing that came in the building. A second, it was awesome. Burdix was here to do a presentation with culinary arts, and it was great. Kelly Brooker Campbell continues to do her outreach. This time around, she did a STEAM and engineering manufacturing project with the Weathersfield 3rd grade, and so then she also did the same thing with the 6th grade in Charlestown a few days later. Real big kudos to John Harmer. He put together a game of blogging competition out at the dam. He had about a dozen technical centers there. Big support from Jason Farnsworth, who is the manager at the dam, but then also a former student, TJ Carroll, I believe, a Bellows Falls grad.
Sounds like it. Yep. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, TJ.
Yep. His business, 802 Trees and Carroll Property Management, donated a lot of materials, which is the logs that are needed to do this. It was awesome. I made sure I stopped by. Culinary Arts put some great meals together, and it was just a great competition. The power of seeing a dozen CTE kids getting after it is why we do this. Again, multiple, spring is sprung. There's a lot of things happening with natural resources. Again, working with the public works, and all this happened in downtown as far as beautifying that. There happened to be an accident while John was doing that, and we got kudos from the downtown Springfield Springfield on the Move director about how John sprung into action to direct traffic because it was right in downtown, and how well the kids behaved while he was away doing that. So it was more than just planting flowers. The engineering class printed their own soapbox derby cars and tested them against each other, and had a big ramp out here in the hallway. It's like soapbox derby except to print the cars. We had some coverage from WCAX for the middle school team that went to the national drone championships in Fairmont, West Virginia. We had teams go. We were scratching the surface of getting into the top, and it was interesting some of the politics that played out, and Chris was kind of bummed, but it was awesome to have all the kids go. But when you get into that final round, the top teams, I can't remember what it's called, but you get to pick people from lesser teams to join your team, so there's a collaborative thing between different teams. In a normal competition with us at 15th and 19th place, you would think that one of the upper teams would pick our kids because we were just scratching the surface. They didn't pick any of our teams. The other teams didn't pick kids from our team, and that they picked teams that also came with them, even though they maybe had lesser results. Yeah. To the site, Edison, New Jersey, really had a lot of teams finish in the top, and then they picked teams that they knew. But a beautiful story done by WCAX on that. interviewed all the kids. Kids were very excited. Kelly, you want to add? Because I know a lot of them you have.
Some
here.
of them are my kids, yeah. They were very excited. They did a great job. They came in, we celebrated them at Riverside as well. And Cliff Wire and Heather and
Mr. Gray came in.
yeah, Mr. Gray came down, and so it was nice, and they were very proud. It was good.
And if you, the day that you walked in for voting for Springfield, Mr. Wire had all kinds of celebratory graffiti on his windows, mentioning names and the place, and it's really pretty cool. Again, Kelly Broker Campbell at Charlestown Middle with the sixth graders. I mentioned earlier that in Kelly's, not Kelly, in Terry's job where we host pre-tech kids, we started doing that with the Bellas Falls and homeschool kids for an orientation. We did our annual awards night, and then a lot of that is mentioned in the chunk of that. We will send this along with the programs to our sending schools. We sent a whole bunch of pictures sorted by school, and they immediately posted them, which is just great work by Terry and Kelly, and I think Coralie had a lot to do with that. Paul Mountain really put them up really quickly. We inducted 12 into the National Technical Honor Society. The students who were inducted last year were there. Tina, please add.
Not much to add. You got it again.
I was there. Recognize all the most improved and the program scholarships and the center-wide scholarships, and great weather.
Yeah, I apologize. I only was able to be at the ceremony for a little bit, and I missed the National Technical Honor Society thing because I was running another meeting. But I know Jess was there. I'm
Yeah.
not sure anybody else.
I know,
I was in a meeting
but John was there. John Bradley was there.
But what it's on SAPA, and I'm sure the other PEG stations. So,
Not the NTHS.
pardon?
Not NTHS,
Oh,
just the
sure,
voice
just the-
night.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But that's okay.
urge you to take a look at that, and it's always energizing to see. You had a big crowd, you had lovely weather, you had a food truck, and it was a great evening.
Food truck sold out. They want to come back next year. We rented 300 chairs.
300 chairs.
300 chairs. We didn't have enough chairs, but then people like being in the back more in the front. So my guess is we had more than 300 people. My activity is there as far as the meetings. I was happy to preside over my last meeting as the president of the Tech Directors Association. Actually, we were able to get the new secretary in for a meeting. We welcomed her with open arms, and as I said, we've welcomed you the same way we've welcomed every secretary before, and we've laid on you all of the things that we would like to fix the system, just as we did the 5 before you. So we have hope in you. Welcome. We've completed a round of interviews. We have a strong candidate for industrial trades. We've just started to do some of the reference checks. So far, so good. And we just identified somebody for criminal justice. And again, we're going to be following through with reference checks on that. We continue to have guidance, school counseling position open. No applicants as of now.
It's posted.
It is posted. We've had some people call, but we have not seen any paper.
Any questions or comments on anything in Scott's director's report? Okay, thank you. Well, I guess a wonderful night last week, and a lot of great stuff as the year winds down.
We have. I'm not going to say anything more about the weather.
We had a lovely night.
We had a lovely night yet again.
Yes. And you don't want to jinx yourself. All right, we look for a motion pursuant to Title I VSA Section 313 to enter executive session to discuss contracts because premature general public knowledge would clearly place people at a substantial disadvantage, inviting Scott and Derek, I presume.
Yes.
Kelly makes the motion. Andrew seconds it. Discussion. Those in favor, raise hand, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed. Thank you. Okay, it is 6:25. We're back in open session. Have a series of motions to consider. First, we have under administrator contracts. Would ask for a motion to amend the existing administrator contract through June 2025 for Scott Farr as the superintendent director for the terms of the contract negotiated with myself as board chair. So, Chris and Andrew, discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Next, we'll look for a motion to amend the existing administrator contract through June 30th, 2025 for Ashley Newton as the interim BTVLC director per the terms of the contract negotiated with the River Valley Technical Center School District Superintendent Director. Chris? Thanks. Kelly? Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, raise hands, say aye.
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 Thank you. Next, motion to renew the following VTVLC administrator contracts in consultation with myself as board chair per the terms discussed for Jennifer Frybush, Jennifer Hines, and Jessica Leo. Lois? That's Kelly. Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Next, non-union support staff FY25 rate increase. Look for a motion to authorize a pay rate increase of 4.9% to non-union support staff for fiscal year 25.
So,
Chris? Ellie? Discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please raise hands or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We are not going to take action on tuition reimbursement. Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned at 6:27. We'll see you all in August. Have a good summer, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. See you in
Nick?
August.
Sweater on, and the air conditioning.
And it'll be cold.